Secretary, thank you very much for that opening statement. Let me just start off with a couple questions, and I'll yield to Senator Capito. There's been some confusion. I think you've addressed it in your opening statement. I'm delighted you have. But some confusion about a guidance document that the Federal Highway Administration issued, I think, a couple of months ago, maybe back in December. But just for further clarification, does the memo tie the hands of states or prevent states from selecting projects to fund using their federal highway formula dollars, including adding highway capacity if they choose to do so?
No, it doesn't.
All right. And second, can you tell us any more about why the department has encouraged states to consider prioritizing projects to address safety, to address road and bridge construction and emissions? Why?
Well, we view these as common sense and longstanding policy goals, and goals that we share with so many of the state transportation leaders we speak to. So under the law, and as we seek to implement it, of course, states decide what projects to build with their federal formula funds. We believe that thoughtful road investments are vital to achieving those safety, equity, and climate goals. Notably, the American Association of State Highway Transportation Officials, AASHTO, which represents the state transportation departments and which I know you've been in touch with even this week as they gather, wrote about how states very much share FHWA's policy priorities outlined in this guidance. The states are making these investments not because of any ideological tilt one way or the other, but because they are often more affordable in the short term, more cost-effective in the medium term, and yield better outcomes for travelers and for movement of goods and for communities in the long term. So what we're really seeking to do is work with states on the investments that are going to create the most bang for that federal taxpayer buck, while recognizing, of course, that context matters and that what is appropriate in one community or state will be different than what's appropriate in another.
All right. As Senator Capito knows, and some of our colleagues know as well, I ended up moving to Delaware when I got out of the Navy at the end of the Vietnam War, and had the opportunity to ultimately serve the people there in a lot of different ways. The foundation of my service to Delaware and to the country came from a conversation that we had around our dinner table when my sister and I were just little kids, and my mom and dad had gone to Shady Springs High School, which Senator Capito knows, just outside of Beckley, West Virginia. And one night after supper, my dad said to my sister and me, when we were very young, he said, "Your mom and I want you to go to college." He said, "Your mom and I want you to go to college." And we said, "Well, we want to go to college, Dad." And he said, "And we want you to figure out how to pay for it. We want you to figure out how to pay for it." My father, who never went beyond high school, he's a World War II veteran, GI Bill, learned how to fix wrecked cars, Burleson Oldsmobile in Beckley, West Virginia. And there was a couple things he used to say to us a lot. And you can probably remember things that your parents said to you, and I'm sure everybody in this committee, that have been sort of guidelines for our lives. But one of the other things that my dad would say a lot to us is that my sister and I would do some kind of boneheaded stunt, and my father would always say, "Just use some common sense. Just use some common." He didn't say it so nicely, but he said it a lot. We must not have had much. But that's some of the best advice I've ever gotten. And I listened to your statement and the response that you had to my first question. It reminds me of really my father and the use of common sense. And I'm glad to see that you're following, I think, his advice, and I hope I still am as well. Next, I want to turn to the rollout of climate formula programs. And we know that the continuing resolution has had an impact on U.S. DOT's ability to move forward with some of the new programs created in the bipartisan infrastructure law. My colleagues on the Appropriations Committee, some of whom are here today, are hard at work, and I hope Congress will soon pass an omnibus appropriation bill to fund the government for the rest of this fiscal year through the end of September. Once the appropriations bill is enacted, how quickly will the Department of Transportation be able to apportion the new carbon reduction and protect formula programs and provide the guidance necessary for the states to start utilizing those funds?
Well, both of these programs are so important for not only the development toward our climate goals, but the protection of our infrastructure assets with regard to resilience imperatives. And so we will get to work as soon as we are able to, thanks to that appropriation that we seek. We're doing everything that we can, of course, within the constraints that currently exist, but I appreciate you and the ranking member both mentioning the sense of urgency that we have about seeing that appropriation come through that will allow us to go full speed ahead.
Time is a wasting. All right, Senator Capito, please.